Hey everyone, welcome to the Dad Challenge. My name is Josh, and I apologize ahead of time. I'm really sick. I got tested for COVID today. I doubt I have COVID. I think it's just a cold, so that's why my voice sounds like this. A good thing is I don't have to go to work, because you're not supposed to go to work when you're sick, and so you don't want to get anybody else sick just in case. I've been tested. I guess I'll find out in a couple of days. In the meantime, I decided, is there a better time to do Bible stories with swearing? Now, I've been thinking about doing this for a while, covering my favorite Bible stories from my perspective, like my commentary, almost as if they're happening today. There's a lot of great Bible stories and a lot of really cool things that went down that you might not know about, and I'm going to tell them to you from my perspective. And some of them are long stories, so I might have to break them up into 2 or 3 parts, but the first one I'm going to cover is actually a really interesting story, and I did a blog about this way back in the day when I was a pastor, and I called it David is a Douchebag, and because I wanted clickbait. And so this story is called David is a Douchebag. And it's all about King David. And if you don't know anything about King David, he's the guy that took down Goliath. And then he became a king. And he did some other craziness. And today we're going to talk about the first part of his life before he became king, in kind of like this commentary style. There might be swearing, so if you don't like swearing, don't watch this. If you like swearing connected to your Bible stories, don't watch this. But I'm going to cover it from like a social commentary perspective as if it were happening today. And so let's get right into it, because these are going to be long, and I want you guys to get out of it what needs to come out of it, because I want to tie it together at the end for something that's going to maybe give you some hope, and I hope so. And so let's get right into it. So David had many nicknames, okay? David was the conqueror. He was a pious man. He was a sweet singer. He played guitar. He was a singer. He did psalms, which are songs. They called him David the shepherd, David the penitent, and now, for me, David the douchebag. And so he was born in Bethlehem, same place Jesus was born, in the land of Judah in the year of 2854, which is 907 before Christ, right? So before Jesus came to earth, he was born 907 years before Jesus came, which is whatever. It's a long time ago. And so he was the youngest of 7 kids, and it probably was more because they really never mentioned daughters. So it was always the youngest of 7 brothers. His parents obviously didn't have Netflix. And so they're just, back in the day, all you did was work in the cornfields, and then you had sex and had babies. That was what you did. Sounded like a really nice life, to be honest with you. I'm not going to lie. No social media. You just kind of do your work. You go home, get laid, have some babies, eat. Sounds great. I would do that. So David was apparently really good looking, and he had some crazy descendant blood running through him, like from way back. And they just basically lived a normal life. And he had chores, he took care of the sheep, and just kind of a simple life. He was nothing special. But he was called by God, and we're going to cover that later. Now, before we go on, there's this prophet. His name is Sam, and he's visited by God. And so back in the day before Jesus came and died and everything was different, this is how God kind of did things. He would visit you in dreams, or he'd literally send a sign or whatever. And so this guy named Sam was visited, and he was told you got to get to Bethlehem, okay? There's a dude there I need you to meet. He's going to be the future king. You'll know him when you see him. So just trust me, okay? You'll know him. He gets there. He meets Dave. He's like, oh, God's right. This guy is going to be king. He knows it. He's a prophet. And a prophet is basically someone who tells the future. They literally can tell the future. They're given a gift of prophecy, meaning I can tell you what's going to happen. And a lot of their prophecies come true, like this one. Okay? All right, so now you have to enter in King Saul. He's a badass, okay? Saul is the king of the Jews. He's a big deal, okay? And he's struck with like a lot of like depression. He can't sleep. He just can't eat. He just has a lot of mental, spiritual issues. So he's attacked by a bad spirit. He couldn't sleep. And one of his dudes, who's like one of his council advisors, said, look, why don't you get a musician in here, sing you to sleep, do a little ASMR, have a little sleep. It might help you. It's like kind of like my Fireside Saturday sessions where we just chill. He needed vibes to get to sleep, right? He needed it. And so a person heard this and knew of David in the town. So in order to know Dave in town, this guy's like, in today's day, he'd be definitely in a sweet band. He'd wear skinny jeans. He'd have the cool hair. He'd be an incredible singer. People like him, and he had a very big following there. Like he's like Justin Bieber before YouTube famous, right? And he could sing, and he had skills. And this person said, "Well, I know this guy. He's got tons of followers on TikTok. Bring him in to sing for you, and let's see if it helps." And so Dave comes in. He wrecks the show. The king loves him. The girls are like, "Oh, Dave," and he's signing autographs and all this stuff. And he's a hit. He becomes kind of like locally famous. And so this kid's got mad skills, and this is his whole life. He's blessed from this point on. He's just blessed from the point he's birthed, right? For the youngest of 7, which is a perfect number. It all has to do with all this thing, right? So at the same time that was all going down, Saul's army were battling what were called the Philistines, okay? Which are, if you don't know what the Philistines are, they're outcasts, okay? Like the whole continent of Australia from the UK, right? They got all the prisoners and all the low-key people they didn't want in their province, they send them out, and they're outcasts. And now they're all pissed, and they're coming back to take back their land, and they're fighting, and it's always going down in the Bible. There's always war, okay? It's like some HBO level shit going on. Like fights, battles, there's blood, guts, murders, arrows, eyeballs, heads flying off. Everybody's dying. The Philistines were not to be effing messed with, right? But the Jews were nothing to scoff at either. They had a powerful army. But, so Philistines roll up and they had giants, okay? Literally they had giants. And this is like, I'm just saying that's in the Bible, but this is also in like historical texts all over. And so people were saying Goliath was 9'9", a beast. Like he's just, imagine the Rock, who's like, I don't know, 6'10" or 6'11", but like 2 feet higher and just as big or bigger. Like a monster. Imagine me fighting the Rock. I mean, I'm a big guy, but I'm pretty sure the Rock would win in a fight. I'm just saying. So anyway, we know that they exist and we know that this was a thing. So they're chilling on each side of the battlefield. This is how it kind of went back in the day. They'd fight, they'd go back to their places. They were just generally, that's just how they did it back in the day, because they can't just send a drone strike like Obama, right? And this giant ass man steps up to the hill and he calls out Saul's army. And back in the day you did this, it's like, you don't do that, right? If you call me out, like I got to do something about it. But no one, they look at this guy and be like, hell no, I am not fighting this guy. Look at this giant of a man. Like who? No thanks. So Goliath is our most powerful warrior. No one messes with this guy, okay? He's badass. He's basically undefeated. And he calls him out. He's bored. Everybody's bored. They're not fighting. You know, they're just waiting for battles. It's so weird how they did battles back in the day. Even up to like the War of 1812. They were just gentlemen about battle. Like, you stand there, we'll shoot. Some of you die, and then it's your turn to shoot us. Cool. Who? Like, whatever. Anyway, like if Goliath steps up and slaps your girlfriend's ass, you're like, you can have her. Like there's nothing you're doing about it. You're like, yeah, I'll betroth her to you. She's yours now. So he's just a scary mofo, right? No one's messing with this guy. The giant has like crazy confidence. And so he tells the army, he yells them out. He's like, yo, Dbags, I'm here, bruh. Give me your finest. Look, if you send your guy and he beats me, we will all become your slaves. And look, you couldn't just say that. Like you couldn't just like bluff. If Goliath said this, these guys would be like, what did he say? Did he just say we're going to become his slaves? He loses? And they're like, what? Because they know that if Goliath loses, they're going to be slaves. That's just how it's going to go down. Because when you say something back in the day, you kind of had to do it. And so they're confident because they know Goliath is a mofo of a monster of a man who's going to take on any of these tiny little Jews, right? They're just confident. But at the same time, some of them are probably low-key like, did he just say that? Like, I'm peacing out, man. I'm not sticking around for this. So, a couple guys split out from the middle of the night. So it was a typical high-stakes bet. And he just did that for 40 days. Came out and said, yo, anybody brave enough yet? Hey, what about you? No? Yeah, you pussy. And so he would just sit there and yell at them all day long. Day and night, and wouldn't go away. He calls them like chicken shit. You got the chickens. Just kind of chirping at them. But no one's going to take this bastard on because he'll kill them quick smart and they know it, right? They just know it. It's just not happening. So enter young Dave, the good looking emo musician who all the girls love. He wears skinny jeans. He's got the Vans, right? He's got the V-neck down to here. He just looks hot. He's got the keys on his belt. He's in a band. He's hot. So this is before he was a douche. Obviously, Dave was not a douche until later on. We'll talk about that later. So he's delivering his food for his bros who are in the front line of the battle, and he sees Goliath over there calling him out, right? And he looks around, he's like, why you guys being a bunch of pussies? And then he steps up, he says like, guys, come on, let's just do this. I don't know where he gets the balls, but obviously we know that God was in him and all that stuff. But you can just imagine all these guys sitting around battle. 40 days, this giant of a man has been yelling at him, chirping at him. This 12-year-old boy or whatever rolls up in his skinny jeans is like, I'll do it. And everyone's like, go ahead, buddy. So they're all laughing and they're having a laugh at this guy. I mean, he's got a death wish. He's in an emo band. He's emo. So he's got the eyeliner. So he gets brought in front of Saul, the king. And he declares his intentions to fight this massive asshole out in the field. He keeps yelling. And Saul says, no, I mean, guy, you're like 12. Like, what are you going to do? What do you bench? 15? You got nothing. You can't even squat. But then Dave kind of talks about the story he had back in the day where he defeated a lion and a bear. And I don't know, I guess it convinced Saul that he could do it. And so Saul's like, yeah, good. So basically, though, you have to understand that God has brought David to this point. It's not David doing this. It's all God working in him to do this, right? So Saul says, okay, he gives him his armor, which is King's armor, which is like the badass armor. Like, imagine Kanye West X Adidas X like King Saul ex Jesus makes a pair of shoes. This armor is badass. Puts the armor on. King gets jealous. I think David kind of saw that. He kind of had a good gut about things. Takes it off. He's like, oh, shit doesn't fit, man. I don't want it. I'll just go. So then he grabs a stick. No joke. Like a stick. If you're in Canada, we grab a hockey stick. He grabs his sling, or like his, a sling that slings rocks. He grabs 5 stones out of the river. And there's some stuff about that, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. He grabs some stones. He doesn't even need 5, right? And so he pieces out to the battlefield. Guys walking by all these other guys who are now going to fight this, and they're all looking at him like, this kid is an idiot. He's about to just be demolished. But they're like, whatever, it's Bible days. Let's just do what we got to do. Right? So Goliath sees this scrawny little punk-ass emo teenager who probably has acne. He's outraged. He's pissed that they would send this little dude to come fight this. He's like, excuse me? I'm offended. Like, he probably had SJW hair on at the time. And he probably had like horn-rimmed glasses, and he's like, I'm offended. Hashtag cancel David. So Goliath sees this and whatever, and he's pissed, and he says this, and he's chirping it, and David steps up. Okay, no joke. David steps up. This like little dude. Okay, nobody's gonna fight this guy. David steps up. He goes, I gotta read it from the screen. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Because you got to think about this. They're Jews. They are God's chosen people. Anybody come against Jews, you're gonna have a hard time. Okay. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. So this very day I will give the carcass of the Philistine army to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know there's a God in Israel. Like, I got shivers in my body. He's yelling this. He just yells it out. And like, could you imagine the vibe after he says this? Like, the music is there. It's all like crazy. And like, he just like, holy shit, that's epic. It's all I got to say. Like, this kid is a badass already. I wonder if low-key Goliath is like, oh man, this kid might be one of those weirdos. So this pisses Goliath off even more. Okay. So, and he starts to come at David. So David, cool as anything, loads a rock in his sling. And so but you gotta understand, he's got this sling. Back in the day, kids, the slings, that's their thing. That was their toy. It's how they hunted. They were good at it. It's not like he just fluked this thing. He knew how to use this thing. He knew. And a rock about this big, whatever, and you get that hit, it's gonna hurt you, right? It's not like this is a miracle. Maybe it was, but like, it could hurt you. But this guy's 9'9", almost 10 feet tall. Okay, so he's flipping this thing. He flings a rock. So he goes, sound effects. Boom, goes right through Goliath's forehead. Like, brain, like, basically shoots him in the forehead. And it's all over. Goliath, sack of potatoes, demolished. This kid played Goliath like a harmonica. Dave steps up, doesn't skip a beat, grabs a sword, okay, big ass sword, cuts Goliath's head off, and all the Philistines ran away. They're like, whoa, what the hell just happened? Bye. Like, I would totally be like, see, I'm out, peace. What the hell just happened here? I'm out of here. This little crazy little bastard just cut the giant's head off. What is going on? Who are these people? So they pieced out. They all left. So David goes viral, okay? Like, he goes mad viral. He hits like massive fame because of this, right? Obviously, this is literally the David and Goliath story, where everybody talks about small beats big, people going after big corporations. This is where it all stems from. This is the biggest story. So he's super viral. Hell yeah, I would subscribe, right? I'm watching this. He's getting up to 10 million TikToks. I'm subscribing. I'm hitting the little bell. I'm hitting a like. This guy is an effing legend, and he's still a teenager. Okay, so not only is he in a cool band, he's rocking the band, and the ladies love him. He just demolished a 9'9" giant of a monster, and just like anything, he's like, hey, told ya. Like, could you imagine how you would want to be this guy's friend? And he'd be like, I don't want to. He'd low key be like, yeah, cool, whatever. Talk to you later. So life takes off for Dave, right? It's interviews and collabs, it's fame, it's money. And the king gives Dave his daughter. That's how you did it back in the day. Girls, they were just like tradable. And like, I use my daughter, especially kings, to like bring kingdoms together. Girls were not autonomous. They didn't have a say. They didn't vote. There was no hashtag Me Too back in the day. And so he just gives David his daughter. Back in the day, these guys have multiple wives, right? So to give his daughter is something crazy, because it means David's now royalty. Okay. And Saul, you can tell, it says it here, is that he loves this little bloke. He loves David for what he did, right? He made him famous. And whatever Dave touches, it turns into gold. He's like Justin Bieber. Like, Justin Bieber puts a record out, he's making millions. Doesn't matter if he poops on an album. He's making millions. Whatever Dave touches turns to gold. Like, it turns out he's a genius. And so David becomes close with Saul's family. Obviously, he's married to them. And then his son, Jonathan, they become bros, like bro hug. They bros for life. Like, they bros. And so people start talking about it, and Twitter is alight with trending hashtags like David for king. David's the next king. And okay, so Saul's like, what? That's not what was supposed to happen here. Saul's a jealous dude, right? He's a king. Kings are like this back in the day. Kings are a bunch of a-holes. So of course he gets pissed and he's jealous. And during this whole thing, he actually tries to kill David. So it's a weird dynamic how the Bible paints this. So one day they're in the hall, and then Saul just throws a spear, and David ducks it. He's like, like, it's just playing it off like he knows he's trying to kill him, but they're just low key not talking about. It's weird. It's so weird. But what Saul doesn't know is that Jonathan, which is Saul's son, and Dave made a secret pact, because they're like bros for life, right? Their ride or dies. And they made a pinky promise, because Saul was so angry at David all the time and wanted to kill him, and Dave knew this, right? He's like, there's this feast coming up, and David's supposed to be there. Like, you miss these things, it's a big deal, right? It's just, you got to be there. And so John's like, hey dude, I'll text you if my dad's like on a rage, so you don't have to come in. So Dave's hiding out in the field, and obviously John texts him, don't come out, my dad's pissed, so don't do it. So they had the secret pact, because Jonathan was basically protecting David, because he loved him. They were just amazing. Basically, Saul sees this. Day goes by. He's like, "Where is this guy?" Because their feasts aren't like an hour. It's not like come over to Chuck E. Cheese, we'll play some video games and you leave. It's not a birthday party. Their feasts go on for days. By day 2, Saul's like, "Where the hell is David? What is going on here?" And so Jonathan, and he gets mad. He's like, he sends his son. I want you to go bring me his head. I want you to go kill him, bring him back, or capture him and bring him back. Jonathan heads out there with a bow and arrow guy, and he saves his life. Basically, just. Hey, he sees him in a bush. The arrow guy goes to aim for him. He just hollers, "Get out of the way!" Again, they're ride or die. These guys were bros, and they were so sad. And so he helps them escape. They cry. They hug each other. They're just bro hugging, just loving each other. And it's such a, I got those bros. It's that bro that'll do anything for you, right? It's that bro you will do whatever it takes to help them. I don't know. It feels like they paint this picture of these guys being super solid. And so it was really good. It's like, so he helped him. So basically David becomes like this nomad. He's like a California surfer guy who travels the world surfing and eating dirt, living in a VW. He's super tanned. He's hot, right? But he's got the hair, and he's a nomad. That's what David is now. He's out and he's sad. But he does the sad walk, like from Arrested Development. Like everywhere he goes for a while. And so this guy was canceled hard by King Saul, right? King Saul's like, hashtag cancel David. And so people have to do what the king says. But in his travels, for whatever reason, he got back that sword that he used to cut Goliath's head off, which is like a national treasure, which pissed Saul off even more, right? So just getting crazy. This guy in his travels, he's liked by everybody. He's a loved person. And so no matter where he goes, he gains followers. So he starts gaining followers again, and people who are desperate and stuff, are like nomads themselves, start following him, like Forrest Gump when he was running, right? When he's like running for no reason, right? They're just for no reason. Like, he just starts gaining followers because he's a naturally attractable person. People want to be with him. He's a natural leader. He's a genius. He's just that guy. Saul liked him too. So, but then he became too popular, and then Saul wanted him dead. Kind of like my ex-pastor story. I was getting too popular at my church, so I got fired. So Saul's still pissed, right? He's waiting to hear where Dave is so he can just F his shit up, right? So there's this guy from another town called Dbag the dog. That's what I'm calling him. He comes to Saul and he narcs out David so hard. He's like, I know where he is. Well, let's go get him. And so these people that were standing in his way to get to David, they were priests. And this guy was forced by the king to tell them to kill these priests. Like 85 priests were killed, but David got away. You don't kill priests back in the day. That's like a faux pas. Like even kings were scared to do this. It just shows how pissed off Saul was and how much he hated David, because he was willing to kill priests to get to David, right? Dave, meanwhile, is fighting the Philistines still, no matter what. He's a nomad, but he's got this army, and he's still fighting the Philistines and doing a good job. He's trying to protect the Jews. He's trying to protect Saul's kingdom. He's a good guy, right? I think he knows why Saul's pissed, but he's like, look, I'm still going to do what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm pissed about that. Like, why are you going to do that? Like, Saul's trying to kill you, and you're still fighting for his kingdom. So I'm just, whatever. He did not owe Saul shit. And so, whatever. But he rescues a city called Keilah, and Saul hears about it. So he hears on Twitter, oh, he's here. So he quick steps over to Keilah. He surrounds the city. Dave is smart. He's taken off way before they even get there. I mean, back in the day, you could see an army coming off for a week anyway. So he's a fugitive, and he trusts no one. So he never sticks around. He can't be caught. The guy's slippery. Plus, he's got God protecting him. So that's a thing. Like, you got God on your side. Like, okay, whatever, you're good. So John, which is Saul's son, his bro for life, his ride or die, secretly meets with David. I guess they find a spot to meet. They catch up with a few beers, and Jonathan tells him, I think you're going to be the king. He's confident. He feels it in his soul. He's like, dude. And think about this. Jonathan's a prince himself. Jonathan is in line as an heir to the throne, as a king. And he's telling him, this is his bro. He's like, you're going to be the king. He knows it. And he'll do whatever it takes to see it happen, right? So it's cool because they say the outlaw and the king's son together again. That is the outlaw and the king's son. What a killer band name. That's me. TM, I'm taking that one. So Saul keeps trying to get David, and David keeps getting away. And at one point, Saul almost gets caught by David, which is crazy. These guys have so much beef, but I think it's more on Saul's side, right? So Saul took some cover in a cave somewhere because he needed some sleep. And literally David was in the same cave. Can you imagine? You turn around like, oh, is that Saul? Is he in the cave? What an idiot. WTF, right? He's in the same cave. So David gets up, he goes over to kill him in his sleep. And he gets hit. He can't. He's guilty. He can't feel it. He can't do it. God is like basically stopping. Cuts a little bit of his skirt. And then he backs off. He lets him go away. He follows him at a distance, and he approaches him later. And he says, look, basically I was going to kill you. Here's your skirt. I didn't do it because I respect you. And he approached him and bowed in respect. And apparently they made up just like that. Like, pfft. Okay, so it takes a bigger man. David is the bigger man here, going after the guy that hates him for literally no reason, and still is the better man and bows before the king, right? And so basically the Bible leaves it there that they were friends, which then later they're not, so whatever. So it needs to be said that David had a ton of loyal subscribers at this point, right? He had his own army. So he was a badass. You don't mess with David anyway. He was a brilliant, genius, badass dude who was good looking, played in a band, and he killed a giant. He was famous, right? Like you can't cancel David. It's not happening. So some beef went down with another prominent dude named Nabal and some sheep and stuff. And Nabal died, and then David just married his wife. Like, dude, the Bible times were just like, this girl's husband died that didn't like you. Oh, I'll just take his wife. The Bible just leaves so much out of it with this stuff. But again, these guys had multiple wives, just a different world. So a whole bunch of time passes, and David encounters Saul again because now they're not friends again. It's weird. The Bible just, like, there's so much time that passes. It's not like hundreds of years. Like, I think between the time that he was left, by the time that David became king was like 20 years or something like that. So sometimes the story gets weird, but basically Saul probably left after that meeting, was like, okay, he's cool, and then just started seething about it all again and just kept building up. A lot of hate in the Bible in kings. Kings are generally a bunch of assholes, and throughout time, it's just kind of what it is, right? It didn't matter. David actually caught him in an area and started running after him, like ambushing them, swearing, running down a hill, but David couldn't kill him. Again, he could not go through with it. Something was stopping him from killing Saul, even though he totally deserved it, right? Basically Saul's whole life was after trying to find and kill David. And the Philistines are out there, making headway and coming through. They're getting there, they're getting close, right? But he's so pissed off at David for just being better than him that he literally is blind hatred, right? So now Dave's so bored of being a nomad surfer, right? He's done with it. He's slept with all the girls. He's done all the waves. He's traveled everywhere, and he's just like, he's road worn. He's got like the leather skin. He's done. And all this time he's still fighting other armies and generally just doing the same thing over and over and over again. He's fighting everybody to protect the Jews because this is what's on his heart, right? So head over back to Saul. And he's getting attacked by the Philistines, right? And he asks God for help. He's like, God, can you help me? God's like pieced out way beyond this point. God is like, I'm not helping you. Like, God is not answering him, right? And so he gets these witches to help him, which is like, back in the day, these people existed. Like, this was craziness, right? These witches and things like that existed. I mean, why not? God's not talking to you, and you're a king. You can do whatever you want. So basically, he snuck out in the middle of the night. He went to these witches' place, and he wanted to ask them to raise this dead spirit of a dude that he could talk to, right? This witch raises this guy from the dead, his soul or whatever from the dead, and he has a conversation. And the guy, basically, the dead soul's like, dude, you're basically effed. Sorry. Like, you're screwed. You're done. That's not what Saul wants to hear. Saul breaks down. He's up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. He knows he's toast. He's finished. So it gets crazy. Philistines are coming up. David's out of the way. David's pursuing. They run into Dave's army, I guess, and a bunch of people get kidnapped by this army, get taken, and 2 of Dave's wives get kidnapped too, right? And he's pissed. His army almost turns on him because their wives are being taken and everything. And so David just like, okay, guys, chill it. We got this. We're gonna go march there. Take 600 guys with me. We're gonna go get these people back, right? Marches with 600 people. They marched so hard, but by the time they got there, they only had 400 people left. Okay. They went hard. So on the way, David also met this guy who looked dead in the bushes, and he helped him. because that's what David does. He's a helper. And that guy ended up being the guy that led them right to where they needed to go. So it's perfect, right? Just goes to show, help people in need, because you never know what might happen, right? So he gets there, he kicks ass, everybody's rescued, everybody. Not one person dies. Everybody they took was rescued. And then you get all this loot and stuff that they took. They had tons of gains from this, right? Just great stuff. David is now revered again. He's like, I got this, right? Don't mess with David, okay, people? Just stop messing with David. So while David was doing that, Saul and the Jews were fighting the Philistines, and the Jews were demolished, just hammered, okay? Because he's just been spending his whole time trying to find David, which is so dumb. And all the king's sons were killed, including Dave's boy John, right? Like, that's super sad, because I liked John. He seemed like a guy that was just genuinely interested in helping Dave. He was very wealthy, he was very privileged, but his whole life was spent protecting Dave, and he died. And that really sucks. So Saul takes an arrow to the knee and he's wounded, right? Saul told one of his sword guys, Saul knows he's finished. He's like, he's finished. He's like, kill me. Take my sword carriers, had guys that did all this stuff. He's like, kill me. The guy wouldn't do it. So Saul falls on his own sword and botches it. Can't even kill himself. And so the sword guy sees that there's no way he's coming back from this. He's going to die. He's going to bleed out. Kills him, then kills himself. Like, just like a Bible. Oh, just what a way to go, eh? So so many other dead guys in the Bible, they cut his head off, cut his arms off, they mailed it to other places. You know, could you imagine opening UPS? Amazon's here, open it, there's a head. They mail it out to be like, here's what we did, this is how we conquered, and this is our proof. And so they mailed these guys head and arms and everything all else. It's so weird. People in the Bible are so weird back in the day. So Dave hears about this and he's actually sad, right? Saul, the guy who's been after him for like 10 years or whatever, just relentlessly trying to pursue him and kill him, he's sad. I mean, he's just a good guy. He's sad for it because he's just, I think in the end, he realizes that the things he's been trying to protect his whole life just went up in smoke. And I think he felt guilty he couldn't help because he was behind them and they wouldn't let him through. So, and like the other times in the Bible, when you're sad, you rip your clothes and you don't eat. And that's what they did, and they just kind of were sad. So Dave was sincerely sad, and he probably wrote some emo songs about it. He's a psalmist, right? So he writes a bunch of psalms, and they're very popular and famous. And he's a good musician, and we'll get to that another time. So basically, this is kind of what happens up before the moment David becomes king. And then it gets crazy from here. So if you like Bible stories of swearing, follow me in part 2 next time when we do the rest of David's story, because it actually gets a little bit crazy, and then we start diving into when he becomes a king, he becomes a douche, which is a narrative for our world, where absolute money, power, and fame corrupt people, right? It just corrupts people. And so we're gonna get into what he did and the dirt he did, and because he was such a good guy up to this point, everybody's like, there's no way he did it. And then if you imagine your favorite YouTuber or your favorite famous person comes out and you find out that they're just a total bag of trash, right? That's what this guy becomes. But there's hope at the end. So stick around for that. Like and subscribe. Hit the little bell so you can get these ones. I'm going to put them in their own little channel strip. And I'm very excited about this because there's some cool stories to be told, and you guys need to hear them. Even if you have to swear a little bit. All right. We'll see you next time.